Welcome everyone to this Tuesday Talks at Noon, discussing the relationship of work-based learning in the schools and vocational rehabilitation services and how they coordinate, work together, and do similar things and don't do the same. It's nice to see all of these industry professionals here. I don't believe we have a parent here yet, but it's nice to see all of you industry professionals that want more information about how these two services work together for the benefit of students that are in high school and beyond. You guys can read that slide. Y'all see the slide. Is there any questions that anybody has specifically right now? If you do, you can ask it or obviously put one in the chat. At this point, I would like to introduce our presenters. We have Keely Holcomb, who is a work-based learning coordinator. What?
It's Keely Waxter now, but that's okay.
That's what I thought. But
my Zoom's under my other email.
Okay. Thank you for correcting me. Keely Waxler from Duluth Public Schools is the work-based learning coordinator. We have Andy Larson, who is one of the vocational rehabilitation coordinators for Duluth and a little bit in Hermantown. And we have Josie Grabowski, who is the pre-ETS worker person for Voc Rehab, and I'm gonna let her explain her exquisite skills and how she works with high school students.
Hey, thanks, Nick. So I'm gonna quickly share my screen and get our PowerPoint on. Let me make sure I share with sound. Okay, is everyone able to see the PowerPoint? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So welcome. As Nick had mentioned, we're going to be talking about how work-based learning through this Duluth School District collaborates with vocational rehabilitation services to provide transition opportunities for youth. Thank you again, Nick, for going through the introductions. For this first slide, I'm going to let Andy jump in and kind of explain some of the different transition resources available to our students.
Yeah, thanks, Josie. So this is it's kind of like a map that we kind of drew up for families in the Duluth School District, understanding and kind of seeing how all these different various opportunities there are for students with regard to workforce or work and employment development skills. So if you look at the first row there under Duluth School District, and it says while in high school, there's four kind of main areas while a student is in high school where they can develop their employment skills. The first way that can happen is through their IEP and with their case manager and like tied to their school schedule. If they're taking specifically transition or self-advocacy related coursework through their IEP, they can perform and do a number of different employment development related activities through that programming. Those are all individualized. Some of them are done within the classroom, and some are done with each individual through their IEP, working with other specialists and things like that. There's also work experience, which Keely will touch on a little bit more later in our presentation here, but ultimately students in the district are able to take a work experience seminar which is a seat-based program. Obviously it's been online this year, but it's a seminar class where they cover kind of the basics of employment development, workplace readiness, and exploring jobs and careers. The CBWE stands for community-based work experience, which is something that they can do in conjunction with the seminar class or after they've taken the seminar class. We have another work experience coordinator that works with Keeley. His name is Tim Lindberg, and he coordinates those community-based work experiences along with Keeley. And that can be some sites that the district has already established out in the community, but they're also sometimes individually set up depending on the student and their individual plan. There's also career and technical ed coursework that the students can take that obviously has a lot of relevance to employment development because they are related specifically, the content of the classes are related specifically to career vocational related tracks. So there's a number of them in the district. One example would be culinary. There's a construction class. There's like some engineering, computer-aided drafting classes. There's some health care related classes. And so the school has a variety of those classes, and wherever a student's interests lie, that could be an opportunity for them to participate in one of those classes to learn more about those specific pathways. And then the last one there, college ready coursework. Now that's something that we just put on there essentially to talk about if a student is pursuing college, if they plan to go to a 2 or 4 year school after high school, something that should be discussed through their IEP while they're in high school is what level of academic preparation is being done for that student. And so are they taking coursework that's going to prepare them to successfully participate and navigate college? And there is also for students on IEPs an opportunity if for whatever reason, because of a focus on their academic development or because of their disability, they've just been maybe delayed or behind their peers in their development of their employment skills. There's a couple of transition programs that are available through the district that would be something that's kind of post coursework planning. So a student would, if they're attending one of the high schools in Duluth and they've completed their coursework, but they still have goals that need to be met with regard to their employment development and their transition for after high school, they can participate in either the T12 program or the Bridge. Those programs primarily focus on employment and independent skill building. And we'll talk more about that later in the presentation as well. As you see just to the right of those, there are outside employment supports that are available for students. There's county social services that can be taken advantage of as far as if a student has a fairly significant disability and are going to likely need supports going forward after high school for like things like independent living or employment supports ongoing. Families can be connected with county social services to get those supports in place so that when they transition out of high school, they have what they need to be successful. Similar to that is both rehab services. However, we connect with students anywhere from age 14 to 21, depending on what their plan is. As you'll see later in the presentation here, Josie Grabowski and myself, we both are representatives for VR. We serve slightly different populations, but do a lot of the same and similar work. And so I do know that county social services is something that families can get connected with and start using the supports available there. I'm not going to speak for the county on that and how that all works, but that is a potential possibility for families to get connected before they graduate from high school. Youth Employment Services is another agency that through Duluth Workforce Development that provides employment development opportunities either through work experiences or part-time jobs. Josie and I both work with those agencies as well as Keeley to help students get connected with employment opportunities in the community. Some of those are short-term, some of those end up turning into jobs, but those are all opportunities that students can also take advantage of. And then there's one last section there where it talks about additional agencies. So the county and Voc Rehab, both agencies, we subcontract work to different rehab agencies that we work with in the community that all kind of specialize in different things. And some of that can be, like with Voc Rehab, primarily it's employment development type supports, but we also connect students with independent living supports, as well as the county does that too. One of the primary differences between the county and Voc Rehab is that Voc Rehab does a lot of the initial work, like while in high school and just out of high school. And the county provides a lot of ongoing supports that stay with the student indefinitely. Once they, maybe reach their job goal, those supports will stay in place as long as they're needed. And I think that's, yeah, something that's, unique about those are that, with the county Voc Rehab and Youth Employment Services, they require an application. There are eligibility requirements. Typically if a student is on an IEP, they're gonna probably be eligible for these programs. At least Voc Rehab and Youth Employment Services. The county has a different eligibility process, and they go through what's called a min-choice assessment, which will help families understand what services are available to them based on their student's disability. So that was a whole mouthful, but hopefully you can access this slide afterward as a reference to kind of remember and recall some of the stuff shared here. Is there anybody else on the team that wants to share anything about this that I maybe missed?
I think that you did a good job, Andy. I think that we'll be able to do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of those services just as the presentation goes on. Unless Keely, you have something else you would like to add?
Nope.
All right, sounds good. Well, we can go to the next slide, and Josie's going to tell you about PREETS and the work she does as a PREETS representative.
Okay, so the first program we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on is connected to vocational rehabilitation services, which Andy introduced us to in the last slide. It's a state and federally funded agency that supports individuals with disabilities in pursuing their employment goals. One population that we work with specifically is youth in transition, so generally student-aged individuals. And we have a couple of different program opportunities for youth. The first one is the Pre-Employment Transition Services Program, or PREETS, which is the program that I coordinate. The purpose of the program is to provide an early start to job exploration and to assist students with disabilities in identifying their career interests. So we like to work with students and make sure that they have the tools they need to find and maintain employment, as well as receiving the guidance and support that they need to explore different career program pathways. The goal of the program is to improve the transition of students with disabilities from school to education or into an employment outcome. So ultimately, by the time a student ends their high school career, we want to make sure that they're prepared to transition into their next stage, whether that's going to college, going into a training program, or going right into the workforce. For this particular program, eligibility, an individual has to be considered a student with a disability. And there's a couple different pieces that make up the definition of a student with a disability. First, an individual has to be between the ages of 14 to 21. So generally we can start working with students as young as 9th grade, and then we'll stick with them through high school and occasionally beyond, depending on their post-secondary goals. A student has to have a documented disability. Most commonly, that will be in the form of a 504 plan or an IEP. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. Just any sort of documentation of a disability will mean that a student is eligible. And then lastly, the student has to be actively enrolled in an education program that provides a recognized credential. So most commonly, that will be a student that's enrolled in high school or a GED program. So that's kind of a basic background of the program. The next thing I want to do is show a short video that was created by the state to provide kind of an overview of the actual services that are available to students that are enrolled. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to pull that up. Are you guys able to see and hear that? Or I start playing it? Does that sound good? Okay, perfect.
Meet Jordan.
Hi there. I'm excited to be busy earning money and getting hands-on experience at an animal shelter, which is related to the job I've been dreaming about ever since I was little, being a veterinary technician.
Jordan, alongside thousands of other Minnesota high schoolers, would never have had this opportunity to earn money trying out jobs if it weren't for the VRS Student Career Services program. These career services are available to students who are ages 14 through 21 and who need extra support to be successful at school or work. VRS partners with high schools to arrange for or provide any of the following 5 services at no charge to students. First up, we have job exploration. What have you always wanted to do? Even if you have no idea, this is where you'll find out your interests and strengths and narrow down a list of your favorite jobs. Now that you have a list of your favorite jobs, maybe you would like to try something out through a work experience. Whether you want to become a vet tech, welder, mechanic, or nurse, you will have the resources and support you need to pursue your career goals. This can also lead to paid jobs where you can earn money to save for a car or college, or just have cash to pay for what is important to you. Not sure how to get a job? Good news! Work readiness training is also available. Here you'll learn the basic tools and how-tos to find and keep a job. What if you need additional training to get that job? Training or college exploration can help you take the next steps for the job you want. Options include community, technical, and four-year colleges, certificate and apprenticeship programs, and more. Lastly, we have self-advocacy training. This service will teach you how to make decisions, voice what is important to you, and speak up for what you need. VRS has student career services available across the state. You can find the VRS staff that serves your school by going to mn.gov/deed/VRS-students.
With the guidance I got from VRS, I was able to decide the right services for me. Now I'm earning money and preparing for college at the same time. Check it out. VRS Student Career Services might be able to help you too.
Okay, so that was a basic overview of the services that are available. The last thing that I'd like to touch on about the program itself are just that there's a couple different points. One, the program itself is completely free to the students and the families that are enrolled. Two, participation is completely
Looks like we have a small technical difficulty happening on Josie's end. I think this is the perfect time we can take a question that looks like just popped up. So it says, do relaxed COVID guidelines allow students to access more job experiences this spring? Would one of Keely or Andy, would you want to tackle that question?
I can say about in our school, we're making some changes. I'm
Volunteering
actually,
with the stu-
oh, is that Josie? In the school, I'm actually here. We are seeing students now this week. So that is opening up some opportunities. In a small way, we're doing a few things around the school now. A lot of the places we normally would go to during the school year are still closed to our students for any kind of group work. But we are creating some things now that they're physically in the building. And there are some students who don't need as much support who are already working in the community, and those things are happening as well now that people can leave their homes.
Thanks, Keely. Hey, Josie, so we just
Hi.
saw you were having some technical difficulty, and so there was a question that was asked, and so I don't know if you saw it in the chat that
I did not.
Do relaxed COVID guidelines allow students to access more job experiences this spring? So Keely was discussing that from Duluth's perspective. Andy, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, and I just wanted to, I'm the one that typed it. I'm Michelle Fauché, and I'm actually one of the special ed coordinators here at the co-op. I work with Nick. However, this is my first year on the job, so I've only been on this job during this crazy COVID time. So the high schools that I've worked with in Proctor and ESCO and Cromwell and McGregor, it's been a struggle for them to get these work experiences. And I know it's changing and it's different in different parts of the states, but now that Waltz has kind of relaxed things, I'm wondering, and kids are primarily going to be back in school or at least hybrid at the high school level in greater Minnesota. I'm just wondering if we're going to be able to get kids more work experiences before it's going to be summer in a minute.
Yeah, it's been on my mind a lot too. I've definitely, part of my backup plan is I want to set things up so maybe they could do some stuff through VRS in the summer. And if we can set it up while they're in school, then hopefully as things get safer, they can get out in the community more, because it's so valuable. And it's been such a hard year for that.
Yeah, I can speak kind of for VR as, you would think that that would be the case as far as, if the community guidelines are loosening, that, there will be more opportunity. And I think there will be. I just want to kind of share a little caution on that, is that, just to temper the expectations, because we have a whole host of different things going on, and employers are still, part-time employers are still reeling from COVID, and they're running on smaller staffs. Now, some employers might see having a work experience student as an asset because, it's an extra set of hands that can help out with whatever they're doing at their in business. Others might see it as, something they don't want to take on right now because they're so busy trying to pivot and make all these changes and stuff. And so large part of that is, we're kind of at the mercy of what the employers want to do. And I think like it is most of the time, during normal times, some employers are great at that and really are inviting, and others are maybe not as much. And, all I could say is on our part with VR is that we're going to do our best to try to seek out those opportunities, work with you guys to look for those and try to get those opportunities set up for the summer.
Thanks, Andy. Did that help, Michelle?
Yeah, that's great. And I have another meeting here at 12:30, so I'm going to jump off, but it's not because I'm upset with anybody's answers, but it's just heavy on my mind as we're kind of returning. I'm hoping, some of these kids that really need this work experience, it's been a year now, so thinking about how we can, like you said, setting things up for the summer would at least be something. So thank you so much. And I'm going to come back and watch the rest when I don't have a meeting.
So I think we could probably just move on. I'm hoping you guys were able to hear the majority of the video at least. So I believe Keely's going to jump in next and talk about some services that are offered through the district.
And I do think we heard most everything, Josie. It seemed like you were wrapping up when it froze.
Oh,
So you did good.
Perfect.
From my perspective, I work at both Denfeld and East. And Andy actually touched on a whole lot of the stuff that's on here too. So I feel like I'll mostly be open for questions, which we also already did. So it's kind of funny. But what I do is I teach a class, and then I also work individually with students who are employed competitively in the community, or are trying to get employed competitively without a lot of additional support. Andy mentioned Tim Limburg, and he works with students who need a lot more support. So maybe they're in a group learning or working environment, getting those skills that way in a group environment. And so I have a classroom where we learn professionalism, how to write an application, how to interview, what a resume looks like, communication skills, all those basics for work. And then hopefully get the kids set up for their own independent employment, which they can also get credit for, which is pretty nice bonus. And then on the general education side, this was also touched on, but there's a list of all the CTE courses that we offer. And I also put on there that we have a career center that has a great deal of help with any kind of post-secondary dreams, aspirations that students have, filling out the paperwork and scholarship and all that information, looking at colleges. So there's a lot of supports inside the school, from super supported to just light support, depending on the needs of the student. Do we have a question about what that looks like in the schools at all before we go on? Okay. And then the other one, I don't have a whole lot of extra to add to this either, but this is for our group that is 18 to 21. And there is a more or a less supported, the Bridge program, which is community-based, students going out and finding jobs that are of interest to them, learning how to work independently. The goal is to provide the supports needed and to bring those away so students can eventually work competitively on their own. It also really focuses on creating relationships and being a part of a community, and just kind of figuring out how to do some adulting through that program. And then T12 is a little more supportive, also community-based, and it's more group work and learning about how to engage in jobs in the community with more support, and then also how to live as an adult after you leave the program too. And if there's no questions, then we can move on to the next.
Yeah, so we have the two different programs through VRS, PREETS, which Josie already spoke about, and VRS Intensive Services. So that's the program that I oversee. And what that means is, you know, by and large, Josie's going to work with grades 9th through 11th, maybe even to 12th, depending on if the student stays with her. But for students that, you know, as students are going through high school and, you know, maybe in their 10th or 11th year, their team is starting to realize that they might need some more support to be successful transitioning into employment after high school, then discussing intensive services and kind of signing up with our program would be a wise thing to at least discuss and look at what the options would be. Purpose is similar to Josie's. You know, we're going to provide transitional services to students seeking employment after high school. We're going to help them with, you know, solidifying their employment goals, making a plan, and then implementing that plan. Everything that we do in VR Intensive Services is kind of tied to what we call an employment plan. All the activities and services are outlined on there. And if there's anything that VR is funding or supporting, it has to be on that plan. And that's a plan that we do together with the student and their family. We kind of like to use SMART goals as kind of our method for making those plans. So if anybody knows the acronym SMART, referring to specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. We try to make plans that kind of touch on those parameters. So it's just kind of proven that when goals are set that way, students are successful. And then also looking at identifying any training that might be best for helping them reach their goals. So training is kind of there's a whole spectrum of training that's available. Most people only think of college, which is certainly an opportunity or potential possibility for students. But there's various layers of college that can be looked at. There's a number of different training opportunities through certificate programs, diploma programs. There's also community agencies in town that provide trainings for certain vocations and pathway development for certain vocations. There's on-the-job training through work experiences or internships that can help a student learn a trade or vocation. So what we try to do is kind of present all those different options and try to find what would be the best fit for our student and their family. And all that, the goal is just to improve the transition of the student out of high school into employment, making sure that they've covered all the bases that they need to, and they have a really sound plan that's going to be successful. Eligibility is similar to Josie's. The only thing I would say that's different from intensive services to pre-ETS is we actually kind of need a little bit more documentation for their disability, because a lot of the activities and services and supports that are going to be ongoing and are tied to those disabilities, we need to have like a verification for those. So we'll usually request an IEP and an eval, and in some cases we might request medical documentation. And similar to Josie, it's a program where they must be a student to be a part of our transitional services and pursuing a high school diploma. I do have a link there. If you would click on that, Josie, I'll just show this real quick. If you wanted some more information about VR services, you can follow that link to this website here. It actually has the video that Josie just shared, but there's also different information there. There's information for students and families, information for schools and their staff as well. Some of this stuff can get tied to stuff that's going on down in St. Paul, and that's fine. If you really have very specific questions or individualized questions, I would just recommend you reach out to me or Josie about those specific to our area. But that's all I have for my end of things. You want to go to the next slide? And I can just introduce this too real quick. So we decided to kind of give an example of three different students that could go through and use or take part of our services and using the same kind of career path. So we could kind of maybe show you and outline for you how it might look differently for three different students who are pursuing a culinary career. And so Josie's going to kind of walk you through student A's pathway here, and then Keely will be next, and then I'll go over student C. So.
Perfect. So for our first example, student A is a student that is not going to require a significant amount of supports to pursue their career goal. The supports that they're going to receive is going to be primarily made up of the pre-ETS program in collaboration with some of the services that are available through the district. So for this student, they're going to start in the 9th grade, and the student and their family is going to begin discussing transition plans in their IEP. They're going to be connected with the VRS PREATS representatives, that would be me, to begin exploring careers and work options. So normally, the most common way that that happens is the school case manager will reach out and say that they have a student that they think would be a good fit for the program. And then I will connect with that student, explain the program, and then it's up to the student if they're interested in enrolling or not. This is not the only way that we can get connected with students, but this is, I would say, is the most common way. So in this circumstance, the student does choose to enroll. In addition to this, they're also going to enroll in an introduction to cooking career and technical ed course. When the student reaches the 10th grade, they're going to have identified that they are interested in pursuing a career in the culinary arts. And this is going to trigger a couple different decisions. One, they're going to enroll in the next level of the culinary arts CTE pathway, which is the hospitality course. And they're also going to be connected with the work-based learning coordinator. So they'd be connected with Keely and enrolled in her work experience seminar class. So it's pretty common for VRS to collaborate with the work-based learning coordinator in creating work experiences for students. This could be in approaching different sites in the community, just making sure that the student is prepared for the expectations of a work experience, or also making sure that the student receives credit in addition to a paycheck for their participation in a work experience. So when the student reaches the 11th grade, they're actually able to use their job seeking skills to independently obtain a part-time job in the community at a local restaurant. So this is one point where this student is going to differ a lot from the next two student examples you're going to hear, because this student is able to use the last couple years of training and experience and apply that to their life out in the community very independently without a lot of extra support. So they're going to be able to create a resume, fill out a job application, and participate in an interview without extra support. But that doesn't mean that their services are going to be done. Instead, the pre-employment transition services representative is going to keep working with the student, but now they're going to start focusing on various culinary training options. So the thrust of services is going to start looking more towards the future and what are some post-secondary options, whether that's a college program or a short-term training program, or continuing to just work in the community to gain that kind of experience. So finally, the student reaches the 12th grade. They've continued to work independently and gain that real life work experience out in the community. And now their support team, which is usually made up of a PREATS representative, their school case manager, maybe the work-based learning coordinator, or any other teachers or people that make up their support team, they're going to collaborate to help that student actually apply to the program that they've chosen. So this could include a couple different things. This could be helping the student actually fill out an application, helping the student learn about different financial aid opportunities or scholarships, or just making sure that the student understands the expectations of transitioning from high school to college. So that's student A, and then I'm going to let Keely talk about our second student example.
So student B starts off just like student A did, coming in, getting connected with PREATS, talking about what jobs they're interested in. They decide to go culinary too. They're going to enroll in some CTE courses. At Denfeld, that's the deli program, and at East, that's the restaurant and cooking programs. In 11th grade, things get a little different. Here, the student is going to have a little more support when figuring out a job. They might do the catering job, which is at Denfeld, or working inside the actual restaurant, serving meals, creating meals for the restaurant at East, or perhaps having some guidance at a community-based restaurant, doing dishwashing or food prep. But they'll continue to have some support in the classroom. They'll be checking in with either a coordinator or with their teacher about those lessons they're learning. And then in 12th grade, they're going to just build on what they've already had, perhaps go from being in a classroom setting to a less supported or community-based setting, doing more work and learning more of those culinary skills. But they will also continue to have the support from a VRS counselor that can help them transition and lost my train of thought, figure out how to use those skills in adulthood for a career path. And that's my student.
So I'm going to talk about student C, which is going to be a student that maybe needs a little bit more support. And just kind of reviewing for you guys, student A and student B, I would say student A is the student that is getting primarily indirect support from the PREETS representative. Student B is probably going to be more of like a student that's getting a combination of indirect and maybe some direct support. Whereas student C is probably going to be the student that would be receiving more direct support and maybe a little less indirect support because of the needs of their disability. So student C and their family begin discussing transition plans in their IEP. The team discusses pre-employment skill building. This is what I was talking about earlier on in the presentation, where through their IEP, either through self-advocacy or transition coursework, or just, you know, through their case manager, they implement pre-employment skill building in their coursework, their specialized IEP coursework, to prepare for maybe a possible work experience in 10th grade. And they'll continue to work on those pre-employment skills, maybe again in either a self-advocacy or transition class. They will potentially do a work experience. This can sometimes happen in the school. We've had students in the schools that work a part of the like food service. They've helped with aspects of food service or the culinary programs. We've had some that do some facilities cleaning and things like that. Or there's been some groups at different schools that have sold cookies. So they go through the process of baking and then selling the cookies at lunchtime. There's a number of different ways that this can be done within their school. They also might participate in Tim Lindbergh's program that does some of the community-based work experience. Normally, Tim has a number of sites around the community: Super One, Lake Spirit College, St. Scholastica, MnDOT. There's a number of them. And of course, this last year, students were not out at those sites. And I think even as they're finishing up this year at East and Denfeld, even though they're going back to school, I think a lot of that's going to be done within the school. Correct, Keely?
Yep, we're doing a lot of things inside the school only.
Yeah. And then around 11th grade, the student C will work with their transition supports to participate in school or community-based work experience. Like talking about what Michelle brought up earlier about, maybe getting some sort of work experience or work activity through the summer. And that could be through working with some of those partners that I alluded to earlier, some of the rehab partners that we work with to provide some of those activities and experiences. Student C's team considers whether county services are needed for ongoing employment support. This is a good time to have this conversation because getting signed up and connected with the county is a process. Where you need to submit applications and records and apply for actually a handful of different things in order to get various services and supports. So it can be somewhat of a process. It's a really good thing to start talking about. I would say in sometime in 10th or 11th grade. And then 12th grade, the student, it would also be a good time for the team to discuss and, review whether transitional programming, those programs, T12 and the Bridge, whether or not those would be an appropriate next step for the student. If there's just some employment development that maybe just hasn't fully emerged yet, that those programs would be a great opportunity to continue that development and make sure that the student is really ready for work. And then the VR counselor, case manager, and possibly county worker will work with the student C to finalize their transition plan and make sure that we know what the student's going to be doing, in the next year after high school. So, any thoughts or questions about student C? All right, well, we can probably go on to questions and answers overall.
So for anybody that's going to watch this after the video, after the live session, do we have emails available for parents that they can reach out? Look at that.
Way ahead of you.
Asking shall receive. Yeah, I would say with regard to, anything related to the Duluth schools, you can, certainly contact Keely. And anything with regard to VRS, you can contact either myself or Josie.
Excellent. I think if there are no other questions that are not burning someone's tongue to ask, I think I think we could wrap this up. And thank you for everyone showing up and attending. And